Hi guys, welcome to this video. So today is the mental health video that I said I was doing. It is a long time coming. I know a couple of times I did plan to do it and it just didn't happen. You know, life got in the way, but it's really important for me to do. The first part of it really that kind of brought all this on and kind of spurred on the mental health in terms of what happened to me personally. I will pop down below or up here. I might just do both for time's purposes. If you want to, you can just click up here before we carry on, or you can just click down below after you watch it. So what I say today, guys, is directly kind of affecting me, but things that I talk about, parts of it you may sort of maybe link in with to somebody in your life too, or things that you've gone through. And I was requested to do this, so it's important for me to kind of listen to you guys as well. The channel is there for beauty and life and things like that, but also it's really important, I think, particularly in the times that we are in, that we do not feel weak about talking about things that have either happened to us or that are still happening to us. So for me, I stopped speaking to my father about, I think we're going on 2 years, I think, if I really think back. And this was my second Christmas kind of without him. Things happened where he was not very kind in terms of speaking about somebody, and it turned to not very kind for me, not feeling very comfortable being kind of around that, and kind of suggesting that we kind of take a break, to where he then just cut off contact completely. And when I was younger, he wasn't around. Just for a bit of a backdrop, he wasn't around when I was very young. I saw him for the first time when I was about 7, I think. My mum picked me up from primary school and said, "Oh, there's somebody at home to see you. This is a surprise." And for some reason I just knew it was him. I don't know what it was. I was only 7, but my mum even said to that day, she said, "You just said it's my dad," and I didn't know what kind of made me think it. It just came out and I said it. And yes, when I got home, he was there. When I was younger, and still now, you can see I'm kind of dark. I'm not dark completely, but I have got kind of sallow skin, brown eyes, brown hair. And the only reason that I'm mentioning that it does have relevance is that when I was growing up, the majority of family I saw was my mum's side, and they're quite fair, blonde, blue eyes, you know, freckles, everything, really pretty, but nothing to what I looked like whatsoever. So when I did see my dad for the first time, I saw myself, basically. I saw the brown hair, the brown eyes, I just saw everything. I saw, you know, physically where I belonged, whereas before I didn't. And so that started off kind of a somewhat relationship. So so that was when I was about 7, I think. And then I would have seen him again maybe a couple of years later. I think it was mostly kind of on the phone, things like that. And then the second time I saw him with my half sibling, who I didn't know until that point. Obviously, I heard over the phone and things like that, but I didn't know him as such as a person. And so that was the first time we met. And so that was obviously difficult for both of us. And you only really, if you're thinking about why is you thinking back to this now, is you only really think about it when something like this happens. You kind of go back in your, okay, so what happened? What did I not see? What did I see? Am I overreacting? When I think about what happened and why we are not talking, no, I didn't. I'm not overreacting. But it's your parents' actions after what you do determines the future. So whatever you fall out about, usually, you know, I don't have children yet, but I don't think there'd be anything in the world that would make me cut off contact. Anything in the world. So if I go back to kind of being 7, my mum really wanted that contact to stay open, because she wanted, you know, for me to know where I came from, basically. All of my father's side, I think physically, I get my physical attributes from them. And so I really felt like, you know, this is where I come from, you know, even though I didn't see him. Having seen him for those 10 days, or I think it was a week that he stayed, I could see where I came from, and it made me feel good. It made me feel, as a 7-year-old, you know, I do actually, you know, I have a dad, you know, he may not be here, you know, the whole thing. And some of my friends met him, and you know, in school, kids can be kind of either really supportive or they cannot be supportive. And the really odd thing about it was the girls in school were really supportive, and the odd thing is, this is primary school, and the boys in school kind of just honed in on it. It was really odd, and they weren't always kind of pestering me, but it was something that they mentioned, and it was, for me, a surprise. But I had a very good set of friends that were girls. There was one neighbor that I had, and he was really supportive. So he was kind of, I remember kicking up a fuss when I was 6 and I was going into senior infants. I think I was younger than that. And junior infants, I think I was in his class, and then we went into senior infants. And whatever way the teachers had done the class, I wasn't in his class, and I think I just kicked up such a fuss. They just put me in his class. He just made me feel safe. He was a really good friend. We were actually neighbours, so we ended up naturally playing together, you know, outside, you know, and yeah, so that kind of was my childhood. And then I had my grandmother in terms of my mum's mum, and she was around a lot, and so that kind of was where I was at the point of seeing my dad then. And so after that, I think it was a couple of years, guys, until I saw him again. And that's when he brought my sibling over. And my dad was married and had, you know, obviously another life. And so I eventually went over in my teens to Boston. And I saw how they lived and things like that. Very different to how I lived in Dublin. And it was just interesting to kind of observe their life, and observe him parent the sibling that I was related to, but I suppose never saw a dad, and, you know, in that kind of at-home context. So I'd go and see my friends and I'd see their dads, and, you know, something like that is very different. But when you're in your dad's house for 2 weeks, and you see kind of the interaction, natural interaction, the jealousy did come in. I would never say it to anyone. I never treated my sibling any different. I was very kind. But when I would kind of think about it at night and things like that. So what I started to do then as a little kid is I started to write letters, you know, kind of every week and things like that when I was much younger. And actually it was more my brother's mum, who was a lovely lady, who actually was more interested in reading them, and she would kind of do a lot of things. So she would bring me and my sibling to the beach when I was over, and we'd collect shells, and she was hugely into the two of us kind of bonding, which happened for a while. But then I think the fact that my dad idolizes to say the least, and this has nothing to do with my sibling, if I just say that he's a completely different person, separate from my dad. They may see each other every day, they may work together, everything else like that, but I do feel like he's a separate person. But from what I can see from my dad's perspective, so not from my sibling, is he completely idolizes him. It's his world. My sibling is his world, and you can see that from, you know, everything that's happened, really. So when I started to kind of feel that there was a difference in kind of what they got in terms of what I got growing up, it definitely made me feel kind of depressed and sad, and I went into relationships for attention rather than for good reasons. And so yeah, it kind of affected me in ways that my dad would probably never know, and probably never care to know, really, which is sad, but actually it does happen. And so as I got into training in childcare and things like that, and teaching, and saw these little kids, I could link into a lot of things that they were going through. But to get back to how I'm feeling now about everything, it absolutely hurts that, you know, I found him on social media again, guys, and I have made sure that I'm not seen on social media in any way, but he popped up on social media for me for some reason, and it kind of really angered me because he had a picture of me and him and my sibling from like 7 or 8 years ago. And I guess what I'm seeing and guessing is that he's portraying everything's great and lovely. And the reason I'm not speaking to him is so delicate, guys, and such a vulnerable thing to talk about, and quite a serious thing, that it's a huge responsibility for me to tell family, so why aren't you speaking to him? It's a huge thing for somebody to hear. So I don't want to have that responsibility of being the one. But then what comes with that is him kind of telling a story, which he's really good at. He's really good at. He could sell sand to the Arabs. He really could. That's what he's in. He's in a job where, you know, yes, he's in law, but it's the one that makes the most money. So we will leave that aside. But I mean, guys, he has this character about him that he could tell you that, you know, you've won the lotto, and even though there's nothing in your bank account, you've won the lotto. It's just, now that is just a really random kind of explanation. It's just how he is. It's his personality, you know, he kind of takes over. And so when I was younger, I was really trying to get that bond with him and kind of put aside myself that he did have this other child and they were bonding, and that's a natural thing. If you live with your parents, of course you bond, you know, but I was outside of that, yet still his daughter. So it was really odd. And that kind of made me look at relationships and go into relationships where I probably shouldn't have. And if I had had somebody there to say, you know what, this is kind of what you should be looking for, it would have helped me a lot more. So yeah, what we're going through now is absolutely nothing, to be honest, which is sad. But he now recently, obviously, as I said, he's on social media with my photo everywhere. And that frustrates me, but I'm not going to get dragged into that, guys. What I feel like is, do things, and this is what I'm going to show you in a moment, and do things that kind of let it all out, but also you're not affected deeply by it. Because if I was to have a conversation with him now, he'd just have everything in his head made up about me already. He'd made his mind up about me. He would have said, Ciara, blah, blah, blah. A woman, emotions, he's very like that. If a man has like a conversation with him, it's amazing. You know, they're talking, they're debating. It's amazing. If a woman has a conversation and God forbid shows the slightest emotion, you know, it's totally different. So it's very frustrating, very, very frustrating. So that's what I'm saying. Don't get kind of caught up in trying to really just say over and over, this is how I feel, please understand, because they're not going to understand, guys, because they don't want to. And that's something I've learned. If they don't want to, you could say anything, and if they just don't want to, that's just it, plain and simple. They just won't do it. And what saddens me, I guess, about the whole thing is that one day he's not going to be here, but my brother will be, and we're not going to have contact. And that is majorly kind of influenced by my dad. Because they work together, everything. I'm sure they see each other every day. They probably live 5 minutes away from each other. You know, they're each other's whole lives, and my dad has made sure of that. You know, he has seriously made sure of that. So when he goes, which I don't wish any harm on him, but what I can see in the future is that, you know, I won't have a sibling. We won't have that kind of connection, because that's kind of how my dad has done it. And that's just kind of, that's where it is. It's sad. He's not going to know if I have kids. He's not going to know their first birthdays. He's not going to know my second book that comes out shortly. He's not going to know all of that. But that's not me being kind of pitying myself. That's me kind of realizing, yes, it's his choice. It's his choice to do this. As an adult father of 2 children, not 1, he has chosen this. If my brother broke a nail, it would be, you know, he'd be rushing over. And that's me, again, doing these examples. And I will always say, guys, this is nothing to do with the character of my brother. He's his own person. So please, when I say these things, he's certainly not kind of included in any kind of how I feel about my dad. It's completely separate. He's his own, my brother's his own person, and he's independent. And what I'm saying is that we won't have that friendship because that's how my dad wants it. Because I'm sure that my dad has said, you know, to my brother, Ciara, and then just kind of went off, and then he just kind of describes me in a way he wants people to see me. So it's a really kind of, it's a tough place to be, and it does wear you out emotionally. It really can wear you out. So I've kind of joined groups and things like that. One of the groups I joined was only for about 3 weeks, but it was kind of an art expression. So this is what they told us to bring an A4. So this was in Freeman, Somerset. It was only about a 3-week-old course, but you had to bring just a plain A4. It was for women only. Plain A4 pad, some writing, a pencil, and it was just like a group of women all discussing. None of us had ever met each other before, and there was only about 7 of us, and so we did. So they said bring some arts and crafty things. So I have like craft papers, things like that I had from the kids, but they kind of gave you ideas. So this is what I came up with. Now this was, before this was just an A4 plain book. So I have done this design. This is what it looks like. So I've kind of created those little paper mache things, and the whole thing is a book basically. And it is an art writing expression of what you're going through, and you can put it, I've opened it and then I've closed it, and then 3 months later I've opened it again. It's not anything that you're under pressure to do, but it kind of made me start to like figure out who I really was. And so here I've done these envelopes that I've made myself, and basically what I started to go into seriously was painting. And kind of watercolor painting, and I started to draw women in different facial expressions. So I will put pictures up, but you can see what I've done there. Nothing is perfect by any means, and that was the one I wanted to do that on purpose. I wanted to kind of show women in different times of their life, the facial expressions, so the emotion came out basically. And then I did another one where I just drew it in pencil, where you can see there. And she's kind of closing her eyes. There's a flower over her face. You can kind of make out. I didn't purposely do too much of a description. And then there was really important words from a book there. And one at the bottom that I will read. And all it says very simply is, flourishing requires connectivity. And you know, that can be described in this video. Flourishing does, you know, it does need to have and require a connectivity between two people, because if that's not there, it won't work, and the two people will go their separate ways, whether that was fate or not. If the connection's not there, it's just not going to flourish. So that's something that I started to do, and I carried on after the course ended. And then myself, it just gave me kind of my own ideas to just jot down things, to really, if I'm having a bad day, you know, you always hear people start a journal, and it always sounded really cheesy to me, and I just thought, why start a journal? Everybody says, but it's to write down, pick up and put down when you want to. Just pick it up, put it down, you know, and just write. If you feel you've got no one to talk to and you just need to even just have something to look back on, just write. And so what I started to do is incorporate kind of what we'd done in that course and start to kind of do my own little designs. So if there was basically why I did my own designs, if there was a day where the words wouldn't come out and the words just wouldn't come, even if I tried to write them, I would do something very simple like I've got something here to show you guys. So I would do something simple like I had printed out some pictures in Ireland of St. Johnston's Castle, and so I just popped them in, and so that's, you know, Ireland 2024 when I went over to visit. And so something like that, and then that just gave me something to focus on, and it really worked. It really helped me out, and I don't go to it, you know, every single day religiously, and sometimes, you know, I would just put things like, if I didn't have any words and I had like a theme in mind. This is an old Nescafe kind of style, you know, in the 70s cup, and their original jar, and some kind of pies. And it's so random, guys, but I just had those things in the drawer, and I just kind of started to make it. It connected my brain to do something, and in a different direction to where it usually would be. So that's a very small kind of thing that I do, guys. It's nothing in any way, shape or form major. And then this is just myself and my mum and what I felt around the time when I went to see her in April and how we were doing, and it just gave me something to really, you know, around the writing, describe what I was going through, and so people could see it. And you know, I don't often write in it every single day, but when I really need to, you know, focus on something, I try to look at it and really just think about how I feel, take a breath, and just go from there. And it started to work for me. This is when I just put sticky notes in it and I wrote upside down. And I know it's such a random thing to do, but I didn't have anything to hand. I had sticky notes. I started to glue them on the paper, and I wrote about how I felt this way. And it was just something creative that just made something different that day, that connected my brain. And it's really difficult to do, guys. This is something that's not easy to do. You have to really try and put somewhat energy, even if it is something small. You do have to put energy into it, and that only happened over time. I mean, it doesn't ever get easier, but you deal with it in different ways. You learn to deal with it daily rather than having to deal with it daily. And I think that's something, when it does sound sad, it's something that makes you move forward, and it makes you not pity yourself. So whenever I talk about parents, no matter how old you get, some people that can connect with that will think that you're, oh, blame your parents for everything. And absolutely, I don't. You are successful, you know, in your own right. And if something happens to you, it's about trying to recognize it and move on from it. So I am never saying I am here because of X, or I'm here and I'm upset because of Y. I'm here and I'm upset because of what's happened and the situation. How I flourish and how I move on is my responsibility. So that's just something I want to say as well as a little disclaimer. I know a lot of people say parents can't be blamed for everything, and I absolutely 100% agree with that. But it's when something as serious, I guess, as what's happened to me, and the thing that really, just going back now that we've kind of gone into things that I do, to kind of try to, you know, let it out as such, you know, the side of my family, you know, except for my grandmother on my mother's side, they were never a fan. They always got a feeling that he wasn't, you know, 100% genuine, and I never believed them. I gave him chance after chance after chance. And now to kind of find out the things that I have, I now just have to have that decision to say, do I keep it all inside and get angry, or do I just move on? Because he has a family, he's married, his wife has a daughter, I think around my age. So I'm sure in his mind, his whole life is like, he's got his stepdaughter, he's got his son, he's got his life. So, you know, there are people out there like that, guys. They'll have children, they'll forget they've had children, they'll prioritize one child over the other, but that other child grows up and becomes an adult, and that shapes that adult, that kind of beginning. So that's what I mean. We're not blaming the parents for who we became, but how we're treated shapes the person we become. And I guess that's what we have to kind of, you know, deal with. So what I would say is trying to make this a little bit more positive. Look at things like, this isn't something that I jumped into. I found this course just like I was looking for like a writer's course to try and get me back onto the writing track, and that's when I found this kind of, it said writing and craft, and I thought, well, it said female only, talking about emotion, so that's kind of what got me onto it. And it didn't last for, I think it was 3 sessions, but it kind of gave me the idea to kind of follow on from like the painting and writing and things like that. And again, it's not, I don't religiously go to it, but I do go to it when I feel like I just need to get it all out, you know, because a lot of people that are in my life, I'm so happy about, and they help me in different ways. But a lot of the things I need to talk about are quite, you know, not your everyday things, like what, you know, why I'm not talking to, you know, my father, or the reasons around that, and that's a lot of pressure to keep in. So sometimes things like writing can help, but if you have somebody, guys, to talk to, absolutely do it. So if I was to say, what can you bring forward for somebody listening, there's always there's this kind of saying, time heals all wounds. I don't think that. I think time makes you deal with all wounds in a way that you can keep going. So it doesn't heal. Something happens to you guys and someone says, oh, it'll get better in time, which is a nice thing for them to say, but it doesn't get better in time. You just learn to fit it in to your life in a way that you can cope. And that's just a very honest kind of way to turn it to a positive way, turn it to something you can cope. Talk to somebody, you know, because things can happen in, you know, from a father's perspective, from a mother, it can be anybody, it can be a friend. It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, my personal experience, but what I'm feeling, you may kind of, you know, radiate to, actually, yes, X made me feel a similar way. So what do I do? And it is about what are your first instincts? Is your first instinct to tell somebody? Is your first instinct to go back to that person and have that conversation? That wasn't given to me. It was completely, for me, it was delete. And what kind of really surprised me is that I was deleted, yet he has my photo of 7 years ago on his social media, shall we say. So that, for me, is something that I have to deal with. It's confusion, it's kind of anger in a way, as he's kind of portraying himself to be, you know, something he certainly isn't. So how do you deal with those things, guys? That's what it is. Talk to people. Reach out to somebody. If there's somebody that you have, even if it's just that one person, if it's a colleague that's been nice to you, that you've had maybe a coffee break with, and then you go, actually, I think they would maybe possibly just speak to me for a minute, they will. You know, people that see you every day are the people in work. We all have family, we all have partners, things like that. But actually, the people that see you if you work are it's always the saying that colleagues see you 80% more of the time than your own family. And maybe look at that. Or school, if you're in school, is there a teacher that, you know, something's feeling not quite right, whoever it is, whatever it is, that's what they're there for, guys. And yes, it's really scary. Maybe it'll be scary for you to go to them, but you won't regret it, because then it's been out, and then you have like a little kind of plan set. So you'll have somebody to kind of bounce these ideas off, if it's a counselor, if it's something like that. I think that these days so many other things are happening in the world, you know, that we're all kind of, you know, aware of and seeing, you know, that the last thing we need is further kind of mental health issues. And so whatever helps you guys, if this helps, I'm really, I hope it does. But for me, my kind of way of coping was friends, talking to people about it. If I didn't have that outlet, I think I really would have suffered. I really did have times where it was such a bad day, and if I didn't have that outlet, I think it would have made things worse. So talking to friends for me was an absolute I can't even, explain. I'm so grateful that I was able to have those people in my life, because that's what was able to get me to the next stage of maybe writing or things like that. Wouldn't have come, that step wouldn't have come if I wasn't able to just express all of this and tell people what had happened and take the onus of myself, because you almost blame yourself for something that you've said or something you've witnessed, and somebody that puts that back on you, particularly if they've done it, that's very narcissistic, and that's very it's wrong to do. And particularly if they're a parent and they're narcissistic and they're very focused, one-on-one, and one-on-one being themselves and not anybody else, you really do have to put that protective barrier up and see the red flags. So for me, it was having those friends to kind of see what I was going through, witness what I was going through, and just really be there. I mean, they weren't experts. We were all new to what had happened, but they were just there for me. They listened. And then we kind of got on from that, and we moved to maybe we should look at groups. And so I did, and that's where I found that group, the art group. And even though it was only 3 weeks, it just gave me that idea to, you know what, if I can't speak to somebody and I just need to get something out, let's use pen and paper. Let's just do this, and I have it. I can look back on it. And it's just mine. It's mine to own. So I would say, if you have somebody to talk to, do. If you don't, reach out to people, reach out to Samaritans, reach out to people like that, because I only say Samaritans because they deal with a huge amount of issues. It doesn't have to be particularly what I'm going through, but they are there for people who don't have that person, or who don't necessarily feel like they may have people in their life, but they don't feel that they're the right people to talk to about that kind of thing. That kind of organization is amazing, absolutely amazing, guys. So I hope this has kind of helped. I didn't want to go too into it, because I do want you to be able to reflect if there is something you're, particularly as it was requested, if there is emotions you're feeling that you can kind of link in with. So I'm not kind of going too much into the my own kind of personal experiences. It has made my friendships stronger. It's made my relationships with family stronger, and it's absolutely prepared me for if I have, a family in the future, what not to do. And that is something that I probably didn't realize I was learning from a very young age. Seeing my dad prioritize, his other child, seeing my dad, in various relationships, and now looking back at kind of how all those ended, and how his behavior towards people. So I think that I'm doing well. I don't think that we will ever speak again, but I can now be okay in saying that, because I kind of was not the cause. I knew what I needed to do. I got myself into a better place. And I let it all out. I didn't keep it in. And that's the big thing. Let all of these, it's not a weakness. And some people say, oh, be strong the next day. And this could be any reason. So not me personally. So anything could happen, and you might feel sad, and somebody says, oh, you're doing really good, just be strong. But actually, you don't have to be strong, guys. How to get to the strength level is to let it out. I mean, they all come in phases. So for me, being strong, I'm stronger now, but I wasn't the day it happened. I wasn't the week after it happened. I wasn't the month after it happened. I mean, you have to get it out. Otherwise, it just stays in and it affects you, and you stay angry. And that's not kind of what you need in life. You want to have a positive life. Nobody, everyone only lives once. You want to have the life you deserve, basically. And if you constantly think of something that has made you feel so bad inside, so bad, that you can't really see a better day, that's not what you need. That's a huge red flag to say, you know what, I'm here for a reason. This is what I want to do. I need to kind of go through this. So that's the thing, guys. If I would say, just lastly, what I would say is go through it. Don't kind of say, okay, I'm fine, I'm absolutely fine, because you won't be, and it will kind of bubble up eventually. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it will bubble up eventually, where you just can't cope. So just admitting to yourself, I'm not fine, this has happened, I need to kind of get this out of my system, because otherwise it's just going to cause issues down the line. So that's kind of what I've done, guys. As I said before, you can see in these kind of little various things I've done. Kind of writing to me has been a huge thing. Talking from me and letting that out there has actually brought some of my friends, my friendships, really close, because it brings you closer to people, and you'd be surprised, guys. So don't be afraid to let that go, because friends aren't just there for the good times, they're there for the bad times. And you may You may have been there for a friend, if you think back in your past, or a family member going through a really hard time. And so that can be, you know, that's there too, you know, for you. Friendships are never, or partnerships are never 50-50. It's always 80-20, but that's how it's supposed to be, you know. It's never supposed to be, and it's never naturally 50-50, whether that's a partner or a friend. Nobody goes through something at the exact same time in life. So always, if you have that person, go to them, guys, because you will just feel like kind of a release, and that's what you need to do, particularly, guys. And when I will say, particularly if you know there isn't going to be a resolution. So that's the other thing. If you know, okay, it's different if you can say, okay, I'm going back to this person, we're going to talk it out, everything's going to be okay. In this case, and in many cases, not just families, in partnerships, anything like that, there isn't a resolution, and that in itself is another thing to deal with. So there may not be a resolution, guys, and that's the big thing. And that's the next thing after kind of getting over, I suppose, and that's where I'm at, dealing with the fact that, and I'm still going through it and learning the best way forward, that there isn't going to be a resolution to this. So how do I move on now? And that's what I'm doing, and I'm trying to do it in positive ways. So this was just my kind of take on what's been happening, how I've been kind of going forward with it. So if you were to ask me, like, if something similar has happened to me, what should I do? If there is somebody that you can speak to, do it. If there's somebody you really, really trust, go to them. If you don't have somebody and you're in school or you're in work, what I would do is find somebody you feel you can trust. If you can't really trust anyone, not in terms of that you don't trust them, but you just don't feel confident, is probably the better way, go to your GP. Go to your GP, guys, and then they will do everything they can to help you. So if there isn't family, friends, you don't feel confident in work or school, maybe you feel confident in school, maybe there's a counsellor, but if you're an adult and you don't feel confident in speaking to somebody, a GP is the best step. So guys, moving on to positivity after this, everybody deserves happiness. So that's what I will end this on. I deserve happiness. I need to know that just because I have a father that necessarily that gets through every day, not knowing how I am, that doesn't mean that I am less worthy. And that's the thing. And that's kind of where, you know, especially as I was just saying before, if there's not a resolution, that's where the next healing step is, not to kind of focus on the fact that there won't be a resolution, because sometimes, guys, that actually is the best thing to happen. So I wish you guys well. 2025 is going to be a really good year for everybody. I can just feel it. I think we need to all kind of come together and support one another. As we know, so many things are going on in the world right now. And if you can just support one another, be there for each other, and just really try to focus, you know, day by day. Everybody says, you know, let's just get through a day, but actually that is a really good way to be. Don't focus on, oh my God, next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Getting through day by day really helps you. It helps your mental health. It helps everything. Get out more, walk more. I'm doing a lot more of that. And just kind of just look at what's best for you and what you want for your future. I hope you liked the video, guys. This was requested and I hope it did help. I'll see you in the next video, and take care.